After I picked up my 7-year-old daughter from my parents' house, my mom posted, "Thank God that little burden finally left. What a relief." My sister commented, "Congrats, Mom." But what my dad did next shocked everyone. So here's the situation. I'm a single dad to the most amazing 7-year-old girl on the planet. Her name is Lily, and she's basically the only good thing that's ever happened to me. Her mom, my wife Amy, passed away when Lily was 2 from complications after a surgery that should have been routine. A simple gallbladder removal turned into a nightmare when she developed a blood clot that went straight to her lungs. The doctors did everything they could, but sometimes everything isn't enough. One day we had a family. We were planning Lily's 3rd birthday party, talking about maybe trying for another kid, looking at bigger houses, normal family stuff. The next day I was a widower with a toddler who kept asking when mommy was coming home, and I had no idea how to explain that she wasn't. How do you tell a 2-year-old that death is permanent? That mommy isn't on a trip or at work or coming back eventually? You can't. They don't have the capacity to understand it. So Lily just kept asking and I kept crying. And we both kept existing in this horrible space where nothing made sense anymore. That kind of grief doesn't just go away. It lives with you, changes you. I went from being a guy with a wife and a kid and a future to being a single dad who had to learn how to do pigtails and pack lunches and remember which stuffed animal Lily needed to sleep with on which nights. Every milestone Lily hit after Amy died felt bittersweet. First day of preschool, Amy should have been there. First lost tooth, Amy should have been there. Learning to ride a bike, Amy should have been there for all of it. The first year after my wife died was brutal in ways I didn't even know were possible. I was working full-time as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, the kind of job where tax season means 12-hour days and weekends disappear. Meanwhile, I was trying to figure out how to be both mom and dad to a 2-year-old who didn't understand why her world had been ripped apart. I was running on maybe 4 hours of sleep a night, surviving on coffee and whatever frozen meals I could microwave, while Lily ate chicken nuggets for the 3rd night in a row. My parents helped out initially, or at least my dad did. He'd come over on weekends and take Lily to the park so I could catch up on laundry or sleep or just sit in silence for an hour without someone needing something from me. My mom and my younger sister Jessica, though, they made it pretty clear they viewed Lily and me as an inconvenience that showed up on their doorstep asking for help. But when you're drowning and someone throws you a life preserver, you don't really check if it's got holes in it first. You just grab on and hope it keeps you afloat long enough to figure out how to swim on your own. Here's the thing about my family. Favoritism isn't just a problem. It's basically the entire family dynamic. My sister Jessica has been the golden child since the day she was born. I'm talking about the kind of spoiled behavior that would make Veruca Salt look humble. Everything Jessica wanted, Jessica got. New car at 16, a brand new Honda Civic handed to her the day she got her license. Even though she'd failed her driver's test twice and my parents had to call in favors to get her passed on the 3rd try. College fully paid for, even though she partied her way to a 2.1 GPA? Not a problem. My parents dropped $50,000 a year so she could major in communications and minor in blacking out at frat parties. Decided she wanted to backpack through Europe for 6 months instead of getting a job after graduation? My parents basically threw $15,000 at her, like she was collecting donations for charity, and told her to find herself. The double standards weren't even subtle. They were blatant, in-your-face obvious. When I was in high school, I worked 20 hours a week at a hardware store while maintaining a 3.7 GPA because my parents said if I wanted spending money, I needed to earn it. Jessica? She got a weekly allowance of $100 through high school for doing absolutely nothing. When I asked why she got money for free while I had to work, my mom said, well, she's younger and needs help adjusting to high school. Jessica was a junior at the time. Meanwhile, I put myself through college while working 2 jobs. One at a restaurant serving tables Friday and Saturday nights, another as a weekend shift supervisor at a grocery store. I'd study between customers, write papers during my breaks, and survive on maybe 5 hours of sleep a night. I graduated with honors in accounting with a 3.8 GPA and $15,000 in student loans that I had to pay back myself. My parents contributed exactly $0 to my education because you're smart enough to get scholarships, and we believe in teaching independence. Jessica changed her major 4 times, from communications to marketing to business, to finally settling on some made-up concentration she convinced an advisor to let her create called Digital Media Strategy. She failed multiple classes that she had to retake, including the same basic statistics course 3 times. 3 times. The same course. She treated college like an extended vacation that occasionally required showing up to class when she felt like it. I graduated in 4 years on schedule. Jessica took 6 years, and my parents never said a word about the extra tuition they were paying. When I landed a solid job at a mid-sized accounting firm within 2 weeks of graduation, my parents sent me a text that said, "Good for you," with a period at the end. Not even an exclamation point. Just acknowledgement that I had done what was expected and nothing more. When Jessica finally graduated with her 2.1 GPA after 6 years of what I can only assume was professional beer pong training, my parents threw her a massive graduation party at a country club. 200 people, catered food, open bar, the works. They bought her that Tesla Model 3 Performance as a graduation gift. The $60,000 version with all the bells and whistles, premium sound system, autopilot, the whole package. Did I get a graduation party? Nope. I got a card with $50 in it and a pat on the back. My achievement was expected, so it didn't need celebrating. Jessica's achievement, scraping by with barely passing grades after 6 years. That was worthy of a Tesla. Jessica was even worse. She treated Lily like Lily was some kind of pest that had invaded her childhood home. When Lily would want to play or show Jessica her drawings, my sister would literally hold up her hand and say, "Not now, I'm busy," while scrolling through Instagram. A 6-year-old kid trying to connect with her aunt, and Jessica couldn't be bothered to look up from her phone for 30 seconds. But I needed help. Daycare costs were insane. My job required me to work long hours during tax season, and I was barely keeping my head above water financially and emotionally. So I swallowed my pride and asked my parents if they could watch Lily a few days a week after school until I could pick her up around 6. My dad immediately said yes. My mom sighed like I'd asked her to donate a kidney and said, "I suppose we can make it work." That arrangement lasted about 8 months, and during those 8 months, I started noticing things. Lily would come home quieter than usual. She's naturally a chatty kid, takes after her mom that way, but after spending time at my parents' house, she'd be subdued. When I asked her about her day, she'd give one-word answers. At first, I thought maybe she was just tired from school and being at Grandma and Grandpa's house. Kids get worn out, it's normal. But then I started noticing other things. She'd flinch slightly when I raised my voice even a little bit. Not like I was yelling at her, just normal parenting stuff like, "Lily, time to brush your teeth." She'd react like I'd screamed. That wasn't normal for her. She'd also started saying things like, "I'm sorry," constantly. Sorry for asking for a snack. Sorry for wanting to watch a cartoon. Sorry for existing, basically. I asked her directly if something was wrong at Grandma and Grandpa's house. She'd shake her head and say everything was fine, but her eyes told a different story. Kids are terrible liars, and Lily was no exception. But she was also 6 years old and didn't have the emotional vocabulary to explain what was bothering her. I started picking her up earlier when I could. I'd rearrange meetings, leave work at 5 instead of 6, do whatever I could to minimize her time there. My mom made passive-aggressive comments about how it must be nice to have such a flexible schedule, even though she knew I was sacrificing career advancement to be there for my daughter. Things came to a head on a Tuesday in October. I was supposed to pick Lily up at 6 as usual. I'd had a particularly good day at work and managed to wrap everything up by 4:30, so I figured I'd surprise her and pick her up early. Maybe we'd stop for ice cream, make it a special daddy-daughter afternoon. I pulled up to my parents' house around 5. I have a key, so I let myself in through the front door, calling out that I was there to get Lily. No response. I walked through the house toward the kitchen and heard voices coming from the family room. The door was partially closed, but I could hear my mom, Jessica, and Lily. What I heard made my blood run cold. Jessica was saying something like, "Ugh, how much longer do we have to deal with her? She's always here." My mom responded, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. I know, sweetie. She's such a burden. I raised my kids. I shouldn't have to raise someone else's." Then I heard Lily's small voice ask, "Am I a burden, Grandma?" And my mom, instead of reassuring the 6-year-old child that, "No, of course not," said, "Well, honey, you do take up a lot of our time." I stood there frozen in the hallway, trying to process what I was hearing. These were the people who were supposed to love and protect my daughter. These were the people I'd trusted with the most important person in my world. And they were treating her like an inconvenience they couldn't wait to get rid of. I pushed the door open. All 3 of them looked up, startled. Lily's face lit up when she saw me. "Daddy!" But there was also relief in her expression. Relief that she was being rescued from my own mother. I didn't say anything to my mom or Jessica. I just looked at Lily and said, "Hey, sweetheart, let's go home." She immediately jumped up and grabbed her backpack, moving faster than I'd seen her move in weeks. As we walked past my mom and sister toward the front door, I could feel them watching us, probably expecting me to turn around and have it out with them right then and there. But I refused to make eye contact or acknowledge they even existed. If I looked at them, really looked at them, I was going to say things that couldn't be taken back, things that would burn whatever remained of our relationship to the ground. And I needed to get Lily out of there first. She didn't need to see her dad lose his mind on his own family. My hands were shaking as I buckled her car seat. My mom actually followed us outside and stood on the porch with her arms crossed, this defiant look on her face like she was the one who had been wronged somehow. Jessica stood next to her, smirking like this was all some big joke. Neither of them said a word to us. Not sorry, not wait, not even acknowledging what I'd just heard them say. They just stood there watching us leave, like we were uninvited guests who'd overstayed our welcome. We got to the car. I buckled Lily into her car seat with hands that were still shaking from anger, and she asked in this small, scared voice, "Are you mad at me, Daddy?" That broke something inside me. This tiny 6-year-old girl who had already lost her mother, who had been emotionally beaten down by people who were supposed to love her, thought that I, her dad, the one person who was supposed to protect her, was angry at her for what had happened. I knelt down next to her car seat so we were eye level and said as calmly as I could manage, "No, baby, I'm not mad at you at all. Not even a little bit. I'm mad at Grandma and Aunt Jessica for being mean to you. You didn't do anything wrong. Do you understand me? This is not your fault." Her face crumpled and she burst into tears. Not the dramatic crying that kids do when they don't get their way, or when they're tired or hungry. This was different. These were the kind of deep, soul-crushing sobs that come from someone, even a 6-year-old someone, who's been holding pain inside for too long and finally has permission to let it out. Her whole body shook with it. I unbuckled her and pulled her out of the car seat, holding her while she cried in the driveway of my parents' house. I didn't care if they were watching from the window. I didn't care if the neighbors saw. My daughter needed me, and that was all that mattered. When she finally calmed down enough to talk, still hiccuping from the crying, she told me everything. How Grandma would make her sit in the corner of the family room and be quiet because she was interrupting adult time, even though the adult time was just my mom and Jessica watching reality shows. How Jessica would tell her she was annoying whenever she asked to play, or tried to show Jessica a picture she'd drawn. How they'd make her eat dinner alone in the kitchen while they ate in the dining room because children should be seen and not heard. An actual phrase my mother apparently still believed in, despite it being the 21st century. She told me about how Grandma would sigh heavily whenever Lily asked for a snack or needed help with something. How Jessica would roll her eyes and make faces behind Lily's back, then laugh with my mom about it. How they'd talk about her like she wasn't even in the room, saying things like, "She's so needy, and everything is always about her," as if a 6-year-old requiring attention and care was somehow unreasonable. My daughter had been systematically emotionally abused in my parents' house for months, and I'd been too blind or too desperate for help or too trusting to see it. I held her while she cried in that parking lot outside my parents' house, and I made a decision. We were done. Completely done. I didn't care if I had to hire a full-time nanny, quit my job, or move across the country. My daughter would never spend another minute with those people. We drove home in silence except for Lily's occasional sniffles from the back seat. When we got to our apartment, I made her favorite dinner, mac and cheese with a dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets, and we watched Frozen for probably the 100th time. She fell asleep on the couch halfway through, and I carried her to bed. Then I sat in my living room and tried to figure out what the hell I was going to do about childcare. The answer came from an unexpected source. My dad. He showed up at my apartment the next evening around 7. I was surprised to see him. He'd never come over without my mom before. He looked tired, older somehow than he had the day before. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside and let him in. We sat at my kitchen table and he said, "Your mother told me what happened yesterday." I waited, expecting him to make excuses for her. Instead, he said, "I'm sorry. I had no idea they were treating Lily like that." I believed him. My dad worked long hours as an engineer and wasn't home most afternoons when Lily was there. He probably thought my mom and Jessica were actually taking care of her properly. "I talked to your mother about it," he continued. "We had a long conversation about how she and Jessica have been treating Lily. I told her it was unacceptable and that she needed to apologize to both of you." "And?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "She said she didn't do anything wrong. Said she was just being honest about the situation being difficult." He shook his head. "She doesn't see the problem." We sat in silence for a minute. Then he said, "I can watch Lily after school. I'm going to start working from home 2 days a week, and the other days I'll come home early. She can stay with me until you pick her up." I was touched by the offer, but also skeptical. "What about Mom? Your mother and I are going to be having some serious conversations about priorities and family," he said carefully. "But in the meantime, Lily can stay with me in my office. I'll set up a desk for her where she can do homework or color while I work. On days when I'm not home, I'll pick her up from school and take her to the library or the park until you're off work." It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was something. And it was coming from someone who actually gave a damn about my daughter's well-being. So I agreed. The new arrangement started the following Monday. Lily loved it. My dad would pick her up from school, they'd go to the library where she'd read, or he'd help her with homework, and then they'd come back to his house where she'd play in his office while he finished his workday. He bought her a little desk and chair, stocked up on coloring books and puzzles, and generally treated her like she was a blessing instead of a burden. My mom, according to my dad, was not thrilled with this arrangement. She felt like he was undermining her authority and enabling my disrespect. She demanded that I apologize for overreacting and bring Lily back over so they could all spend time together like a normal family. I ignored her messages. All of them. Then, about 3 weeks into the new arrangement, my dad called me at work. He sounded furious, which was unusual for him. My dad is typically calm and measured, the kind of guy who thinks through everything before speaking. "You need to see something," he said. "I'm sending you a link. Call me back after you look at it." He texted me a Facebook link. I clicked it and felt my stomach drop. It was a post from my mother's Facebook account from earlier that morning. The post read, "The stupid burden finally got picked up by her dad. What a relief." There were already a dozen comments on it. Family members asking what she was talking about. Friends offering sympathy for whatever situation she was dealing with. And right at the top, the very first comment was from my sister Jessica. "Congrats, Mom!" They were talking about my daughter. My 6-year-old daughter who had lost her mother and was just trying to exist in a world that already felt too big and scary. They were calling her a stupid burden on social media for everyone to see. I sat in my office staring at that post for a solid 10 minutes. I screenshotted it, multiple times from different angles showing the timestamp, the comments, everything, because I knew they'd delete it eventually. Then I called my dad back. "Did you see it?" he asked. "Yeah, I saw it. I'm done," he said simply. "I've spent 32 years married to your mother. I've overlooked her favoritism toward Jessica. I've made excuses for her behavior. I've tried to be the peacekeeper. But calling Lily a stupid burden where anyone can see it? I'm done. Dad, I'm meeting with a divorce attorney tomorrow," he continued. "I wanted to let you know so you wouldn't hear it from your mother first. And I wanted to ask if Lily and I could stay with you for a few days while I figure out the separation logistics." I was shocked. My parents had been married for over 3 decades. They'd weathered a lot of storms together. I never imagined my dad would actually leave my mom. "Of course you can stay here," I said. "But Dad, are you sure? This is a big decision." "I'm sure," he said, and he sounded more certain than I'd heard him sound about anything in years. A person who would publicly call a 6-year-old child a stupid burden isn't someone I want to spend the rest of my life with. That evening, my dad showed up with 2 suitcases and a determined expression. Lily was thrilled to have Grandpa staying with us. She didn't understand all the adult complications. She just knew that her favorite person was going to be sleeping in the guest room and she could see him every day. I set my dad up in the guest room, which was really just a converted office with a futon, but he didn't complain. We ordered pizza for dinner and watched a movie with Lily. It felt weirdly normal despite everything falling apart around us. After Lily went to bed, Dad and I sat in the living room and talked about next steps. He'd already contacted a lawyer he knew through work. They had a meeting scheduled for Thursday. He was planning to file for divorce based on irreconcilable differences and emotional abuse. Not of him, but of Lily. "Your mother is going to lose her mind," I said. "I know," he replied, "but some things are more important than keeping the peace." The next day, I decided I needed to confront my mother directly about that Facebook post. Not for her sake, but for mine. I needed her to know exactly how I felt about what she'd done. I drove to my parents' house. My dad's house, really, since he'd been the one paying the mortgage for 30 years. My mom's car was in the driveway. Jessica's car was also there, which didn't surprise me. Those two were joined at the hip. I knocked on the door. My mom answered, and her face immediately shifted from neutral to defensive when she saw me. "What do you want?" she asked. Not "hello" or "how are you" or "I'm sorry for calling your daughter a burden on social media." Just "what do you want?" like I was a salesman bothering her during dinner. "I want to talk about your Facebook post," I said calmly. I'd promised myself I wouldn't yell, wouldn't lose my temper. I was going to be calm and clear and make sure she understood exactly what she'd done. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, already playing dumb. "The post where you called Lily a stupid burden and Jessica congratulated you for it," I clarified. "That post. The one you deleted about 2 hours after putting it up, probably after someone pointed out how insane it made you look." She had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, but she recovered quickly. "I was venting. I'm allowed to have feelings." "You called a 6-year-old child a stupid burden on a public forum," I said, still keeping my voice level. "That's not venting. That's cruelty." Jessica appeared behind my mom like a gothic villain's henchman. "Maybe if you weren't such a terrible parent, we wouldn't have to deal with your kid all the time." I laughed. Laughed. Because the absurdity of Jessica, who had never worked a real job, never paid her own bills, never taken responsibility for anything in her entire spoiled life, calling me a terrible parent was too much. "Jessica," I said, looking past my mom to make eye contact with my sister, "you're 28 years old and you still live with your parents. You've never held a job for more than 6 months. You've contributed nothing to society except Instagram posts and entitlement. The last thing I need is parenting advice from someone who can't even parent herself into basic adulthood." Her face turned red. "How dare you?" "How dare I what?" I interrupted. "Tell the truth? Point out that you're a perpetual child? Notice that you called my daughter a stupid burden and thought that was an acceptable thing to do?" My mom stepped between us. "You need to leave. This is my house and I won't have you disrespecting your sister like this." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "this is Dad's house. He bought it, he pays for it, and he's filing for divorce. So you might want to start looking for somewhere else to live since I doubt he's going to let you keep the house after you publicly humiliated his granddaughter." The looks on their faces were priceless. Shock, disbelief, anger, all cycling through in rapid succession. "He's what?" My mom managed to get out. "Filing for divorce," I repeated slowly, like I was explaining to a child. Turns out calling his granddaughter a stupid burden was the last straw. Who knew that treating a 6-year-old like garbage might have consequences? Jessica found her voice. "This is all because of you and your kid. You destroyed this family." I looked at both of them standing there, united in their delusion that they were the victims in this situation. My mother, who had emotionally abused my daughter. My sister, who had never shown Lily an ounce of kindness or love. "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed this family when you decided that Lily was a burden instead of a blessing. When you chose cruelty over compassion. When you picked favoritism over fairness. I just finally opened my eyes and saw you for who you really are." I turned to leave, then stopped and looked back. "By the way, Mom, you're not my mother anymore. Mothers love their grandchildren. Mothers protect them. You're just a person I happen to share DNA with. And Jessica," I looked at my sister, call Lily a stupid burden one more time. I dare you, because I promise you won't like what happens next." Neither of them said anything. Maybe they saw the anger in my eyes and realized I wasn't messing around anymore. Maybe they were just too shocked to respond. Either way, I walked out of that house knowing it was the last time I'd ever step foot in it. The drive home was quiet. I felt emotionally drained, but also lighter somehow. Like I'd been carrying around this weight of obligation to people who didn't deserve my loyalty, and I'd finally set it down. When I got home, Lily ran up to give me a hug like she always did. My dad was in the kitchen making grilled cheese sandwiches, Lily's second favorite dinner after mac and cheese. Everything felt peaceful and right, in a way it hadn't in months. That evening, after Lily went to bed, my dad told me more about his meeting with the divorce attorney. The lawyer had advised him that given the Facebook post and the documented emotional abuse of Lily, my mom wasn't going to have much leverage in the divorce. Dad was planning to offer her a fair settlement, half the liquid assets, but he'd keep the house since he'd paid for it. If she fought him on it, he'd bring up the Facebook post and her treatment of Lily in court. "Do you think she'll fight?" I asked. "Probably," he said. "Your mother doesn't like losing, and she definitely doesn't like being held accountable for her actions." He was right. About a week later, my mom and Jessica showed up at my apartment. It was 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. I opened the door and there they stood. My mom looking worn down and tired, Jessica behind her looking sullen. "We want to come in and apologize to Lily," my mom said. Her voice was different, softer, almost pleading. For a second, I almost believed she meant it. Almost thought that maybe she'd done some soul searching and realized how badly she'd messed up. Then my dad appeared next to me. He looked at my mom with cold, hard eyes and said loud enough for both of them to hear, "Send them away. The divorce papers were just served. That's why they're here." And just like that, I understood. The lawyer had served my mom with divorce papers that afternoon. She'd probably spent the last few hours calculating how much money she stood to lose in the divorce. She realized that my dad was serious, that he wasn't going to back down, and that her comfortable lifestyle was about to disappear. So she came here to apologize. Not because she meant it, not because she was actually sorry for what she'd done to Lily, but because she thought if she could get my dad to see her being remorseful, he might reconsider the divorce. Once again, Lily was just a means to an end for her, a pawn in her game to avoid consequences. I looked at my mom and said clearly and firmly, "Get out of here and don't ever come back." My mom didn't give up that easily. She tried to step past me, looking at my dad with tears in her eyes. Probably the first real tears she'd cried this whole time, but they were for herself, not for the pain she'd caused. "Please," she said to him, "we can work this out. We've been married for 32 years. That has to mean something." My dad's expression didn't change. "You're right, it meant something. Past tense. I gave you a chance that day when I heard what you and Jessica were saying to Lily. All you had to do was admit you were wrong and genuinely apologize. But instead, you doubled down. You posted that garbage on Facebook. You called my granddaughter a stupid burden for the world to see." He paused, then continued. "I spent 3 decades making excuses for your behavior, telling myself that you'd change, that you'd grow as a person, that eventually you'd see Jessica wasn't the only child that mattered. I was wrong. You're never going to change. And I'm done waiting for it to happen." My mom opened her mouth to argue, but my dad held up his hand. "The divorce is happening. You can make it easy and take the settlement my lawyer offered, or you can fight it and we'll air all of this in court, including the Facebook post, the emotional abuse, all of it. Your choice." Jessica finally spoke up. "This is ridiculous. You're going to throw away your marriage over a Facebook post?" "No," my dad said, looking at her. "I'm ending my marriage because my wife publicly called my 6-year-old granddaughter a stupid burden and showed zero remorse for it. There's a difference." I took out my phone and pulled up the emergency number for the non-emergency police line. My mom and Jessica saw what I was doing. "Really?" Jessica said. "You're going to call the police on your own family?" "You're not my family anymore," I said simply. "Family doesn't treat each other like this. Now leave before I make that call and have you removed for trespassing." They looked at each other, some kind of silent communication passing between them. Then my mom turned on her heel and walked away, Jessica following close behind. Their steps were quick, none of the confidence they'd had when they first showed up. I stood at the door and watched them get in Jessica's car and drive away. As their taillights disappeared down the street, I felt my dad's hand on my shoulder. "You did good," he said quietly. That was 2 years ago. My dad and mom officially got divorced after a 6-month legal battle. My mom tried to fight for more money, tried to claim that my dad was abandoning her after decades of marriage, tried every manipulation tactic in the book. But the evidence was clear. The Facebook post, statements from me about the emotional abuse, even testimony from some of my dad's coworkers who had seen how stressed he'd become dealing with my mom's behavior. In the end, my dad kept the house and gave my mom half of their liquid savings, about $200,000. It was more than fair considering what she'd done, but my dad wanted the divorce finalized and was willing to pay for his freedom. The biggest surprise came a few weeks after the divorce was finalized. My dad sat me down and told me he'd set up a college fund for Lily. When I asked how much, he said, "Almost $500,000. I actually thought I'd heard him wrong. $500,000? He nodded. "I sold the house and some investments. After the divorce settlement, I had about $700,000 left. I kept $200,000 for myself. more than enough for my retirement, and put the rest away for Lily's education. I tried to object. Told him he needed that money for his retirement, that he couldn't just give away his life savings. He wouldn't hear it. I'm 62 years old, he said. I have a pension, Social Security, and my retirement accounts. I don't need a big house or fancy vacations. What I need is to make sure my granddaughter has every opportunity in life. Your mother and Jessica stole enough from her. Her sense of security, her trust in family. They're not stealing her future too. I hugged my dad and cried. Not the masculine eye got watery kind of crying. Full-on sobbing like a kid. Because in a world where my own mother had called my daughter a burden, my dad had just given her $500,000 for college and called it an investment in her future. Currently, my dad lives with Lily and me in our 3-bedroom house. We moved out of the apartment about a year ago when I got promoted to senior accountant and could afford something bigger. Dad has his own room. Lily has hers decorated in various shades of purple with more stuffed animals than any human should reasonably own. And I have mine. Our routine is simple and good. Dad picks Lily up from school 3 days a week. The other 2 days, she goes to an after-school program she loves where they do art and gymnastics. We have dinner together every night. Sometimes I cook, sometimes Dad does, sometimes we order pizza and call it good enough. Weekends, we go to the park or the movies or just hang out at home. Lily calls my dad her hero. She made him a card for Father's Day last year that said, "To the best grandpa and hero in the whole world." It's hanging on his bedroom wall. As for my mom and Jessica, I've heard bits and pieces through the family grapevine. My mom moved to Arizona to live near her sister after the divorce. She apparently doesn't talk to anyone in the family much anymore. Whether because she's embarrassed or just doesn't care, I don't know. Jessica still lives in our hometown, but she's basically been ostracized from most family events. See, my dad told the extended family what Jessica had said about Lily, called her a stupid burden, congratulated my mom for getting rid of her. Our relatives, most of whom actually have functioning hearts and souls, were horrified. Jessica doesn't get invited to family reunions anymore, doesn't get asked to holiday dinners. She's basically been voted off the family island. And unlike her usual pattern of behavior, she can't blame anyone but herself. I heard through a cousin that Jessica tried to apologize to some family members, claiming she didn't mean it and was just joking around. But the screenshots of that Facebook post don't lie. The comments she made in person don't disappear just because she regrets them now. Actions have consequences, and Jessica is finally learning that lesson at 29 years old. I'm doing well too. The promotion came with a significant raise. I'm actually dating someone, a kindergarten teacher who Lily absolutely adores. But every now and then, I get messages from relatives on my mom's side of the family. They're my mom's siblings and their kids, mostly. They send me long texts about how I destroyed the family and that I overreacted to the situation. They say things like, "It was just a Facebook post, and you ruined your parents' marriage over words." Just a Facebook post. As if calling a 6-year-old a stupid burden publicly was equivalent to sharing a recipe or complaining about traffic. I usually don't respond to these messages. But sometimes, when I'm feeling particularly honest, I'll reply with something like, "My daughter lost her mother when she was 2 years old. She needed love and support and family. Instead, she got called a stupid burden by her grandmother and mocked by her aunt. I didn't destroy anything. I protected my daughter from people who were hurting her. If you can't understand that, then I don't need you in my life either." That usually shuts them up for a while.